After many recent cases of police brutality in the United States, there has become a national discussion on if police authority should be restricted. With the recent deaths of Michael Brown, Tania Rice, Freddie Gray, and Sandra Bland at the hands of police officers and the public outcry that followed, police brutality has become a national debate. We have 4 very intelligent experts on studies relevant to the topic of police brutality with us today. Please welcome Knox Hall, a renowned law expert, Dr. Ehrhart from Oxford University, Matt Rogers from the University of Texas, and John Hudson from Columbia University. Now on to our first question. In the United States this year alone, there have been 800 plus deaths caused by police officers. In Germany, there have been less than 10. Is the cause of all these deaths due to too much authority given to the U.S. police force?
Simply no. The reason for less police shootings in other countries like Germany is due to strict gun regulations. Germany is known to have one of the most strict gun regulations in Europe, where the German government controls the regulation of all firearms and the restriction of many others. The reason is not due to the U.S. police officers' improper actions, but due to the fact of the United States' right to bear arms. The police are at a higher risk of death every day because of the amount of guns out on the streets. Unless you want to get rid of a building block to our great country, there will not be a decrease in the guns in the United States. The police officers are not at fault for the larger amount of force they have to use to take control of situations that involve guns and other harmful objects. Unless you want to have your rights given to you taken away, I'll acknowledge that the police officers have the appropriate authority for the circumstances they are put into every day.
I have to disagree with that. In Germany, police officers are trained not to shoot. It is not a lack of guns in Germany, but a lack of training in the United States. While in America, whenever their police officers are threatened in any way, they fire at will. German officers are trained that their gun is not a toy, that it is a life-threatening weapon, that they must understand the consequences of their weapon and not treat it as something that it is to be played with. Another problem is the amount of guns in circulation in America. When juxtaposed to the amount of guns in circulation in Germany, where there is for 100 people, there's only 30.3 guns. In America, for every 100 people, there's 88.8 guns, which is just too high. While the right to bear arms is essential to the foundation of our country, with the Founding Fathers thinking highly enough of it to make it the Second Amendment, guns have gotten out of control. With all the recent violence in our country, it's time to take a look at the gun control laws in our country. But to refocus, our police need to be trained better. With more comprehensive training that focuses on just how dangerous their weapons truly are, perhaps we could get our skyrocketing police violence rates down. If police do not show that they can handle their authority, then something must be done to fix it. I suggest putting in laws that let police know that if they break the law, they will face the consequences.
On to the next question. Evidence shows that 61% of the people involved in police brutality do not report the serious abuse. Matt, why do you think people don't say anything?
And the main reason that people do not report police brutality is for the fear of what will happen to them if they do. When people are constantly being shown by the news of how the police are using the authority to harm people, it makes it hard for them to go running to them for support. On the other hand, there are many factors that keep police from reporting police brutality that they personally see. Police who report misconduct are frequently shunned by their peers and other police.
Matt, people do not fear the police officers in the community. People who are involved don't report police brutality because they believe in their police force and the measures they are taking. A recent survey shows that nearly 3/4 of people approve of their local police's job. If you believe in your police force's job and how they are able to do that job, you believe their measures of force are necessary for the circumstances and tell the authorities. In the Scarlet Letter, Hester Prynne doesn't tell the other clergymen about Dimsdale's mistake because she thought his job was important to the community. Like Dimsdale, as a priest is important in the community, policemen are important in the community also. They did not make Dimsdale or Hester bad people. Policemen are not bad people. We can just cut that little part out. Policemen are not bad people.
You can't cut the whole thing out.
Keep going.
We can fix it.
They're waking up in the morning hoping for a chance to use excessive force on someone. They are trying to do their best they can to keep the community safe and free of crime. And sometimes there are circumstances that require more force. The people understand that and do not report when force is used.
Why is it common today for popular media outlets to portray the police in a negative light? And is there a correlation between this and the public's views on police?
Well, in the Scarlet Letter, when Hester is scrutinized for her action, the same thing happens to police in today's society. When media outlets portray police in a negative light, it's because police act in unnecessarily violent ways. If a police acts in a civil manner and arrest a criminal the way they are trained to do, then it wouldn't make the news. It is news when the police fail to do their jobs correctly time and time again. The public's view of police is altered when they see that the public officials that are put in place to keep people safe are doing the opposite. And until police can learn what they can and cannot do to people, people will fear them and create stereotypes.
Okay, ready? Media is fundamentally a form of entertainment, especially when on TV. And channels fight for viewers and ratings because the greater amount of ratings they have, the more value their channel has. The greater value their channel outlet has, the more money they make. The media today plays a very similar role as the gossips in Puritan society did. In Hester Prynne's case, the community gossips spread word of Hester's sin, as well as exaggerating a bit to give the story a little more wow factor. Media today is the same in its reports on policemen. Just like how the townspeople lied a bit, most American media outlets are inclined to do the same, all in order to produce a juicier story that will get more viewers than a story with nothing but the facts. The police force's actions have been a scene of great controversy recently, and media outlets know this. They air anything that can manipulate this topic to gain viewers, and what's working for them right now is putting the police in a bad light. It's not a complex concept. Police in a poor light equals more views equals more money. In the case of Michael Brown and Ferguson, the court ruled that the officer Darren Wilson was innocent. However, the media portrayed Wilson as a murderer and a corrupt officer who did not follow protocol throughout the entire incident. Cameron, you asked if there's a correlation between the media's view and the public's view, and I have to answer with a resounding yes. The media is directly related with how the American public views certain situations, especially when the majority of media outlets say the same thing. In this case, police are corrupt and negative people. As Americans, we need to educate ourselves on events from multiple sources rather than sticking to one source. If we do this, and our media portrays events how they happen, we won't have a problem with stereotyping police or viewing police in a way that they don't deserve to be viewed.
Next question. Many people in the media and the public claim that police brutality is aimed at African Americans, but a recent study found that in 2014, of the people killed by police, whites led with 414 and African Americans were a distant second with 233. Is it a misconception that most deaths are aimed at African Americans?
The common misconception that lethal force is used solely on African Americans is rubbish. As stated in the last answer, the media portrays what's the most controversial. And right now, police brutality is a very hot-button topic, and of course that's what you're going to hear about when you turn on the news. Very rarely is the use of lethal force covered nationally when an African American is killed by an African American officer, or a white killed by a white officer. You can look at the numbers and say that 233 African Americans were murdered by police, but that's simply not true. There's a problem with saying that because it's not true. Yes, I can see that there were a few cases of excessive force in that statistic, but you can't ignore the fact that there were also cases of excessive force in the statistic of white people killed by police. To only look at one side of the equation isn't right, and to judge your police system that protects you based on half the equation is even less right. To say that 233 people were victims isn't true because you have to remember that lethal force is necessary in the appropriate situations. Police officers are humans too, and they have a right to defend themselves. The appropriate use of lethal force isn't murder, and it isn't racism. It's following protocol and defending yourself as an officer. To put simply, the appropriate use of force is not an indication of racism or an institutionally biased system.
While the numbers show that more whites are killed than African Americans, that is an empty number. There is a reason that the media tends to cover the deaths of African Americans more thoroughly. If you dive deeper into those numbers, you will find that over half of the African Americans killed were found to have been killed for reasons that were less than deserving death, while the deaths of whites at the hands of police officers were mostly in cases where the officer had probable cause to believe that he needed to discharge his weapon. In the case of Sandra Bland, she was killed for simply asking for her rights at a simple traffic stop for speeding. It is pretty hard to believe in this day and age that her race had nothing to do with that. The scrutiny that is heaped on police over race issues is similar to the scrutiny that the people of Boston felt over religious issues during the Scarlet Letter by Hester Prynne and Dimsdale. Race plays a large part in the killings and is a blatant bias by the police. If not for race, I doubt that the killing of Michael Brown or Sandra Bland would have happened.